My name's Addie Moorfoot. I'm a writer with Variety. I want to introduce to the stage directors Jesse Shortbull, Tomaselli, executive producer Sarah Eagle-Hart, executive producer Mark Ruffalo, and subject Alex Romero-Frederick. I just want to say thank you to all of you for an amazing film that I can't wait to show my 12-year-old. I learned so much, so I really want to thank everybody here. I did some research and I wanted to ask Jesse and Laura, what I read was like a producer, Ben, I don't know his last name, read an article about this and came to, I don't know if it was just you, Jesse, or both of you. Can you explain the origins of the project a little bit?
It was an article that somehow Ben came across, and I'm really grateful that he did. And that was kind of the spark that started everything. He then looked for somebody locally, and somehow my name came up. And, you know, in our initial conversation, I was very cautious because I knew just how close a lot of my relatives back home, a lot of our Lakota people hold this to their hearts. And I didn't know if that would be something that I could ever do justice to. But what struck me after that moment of hesitancy was that if Ben, our producer at the time, a stranger from a world away, having the curiosity about this issue, then maybe somebody else who not from the Great Plains region or familiar with the treaty, maybe they too would have the same curiosity. And that is what set the first step forward.
And Sarah, I wanted to ask you, so I think I've heard you say this, that you were initially hesitant to come on the project, even though Mark had signed on as an executive producer. Can you talk about that hesitancy and why initially you were debating?
Yeah, it took me about a month probably to say yes, and if you see the story, you see how complex it is, and there are so many tribal politics involved with the Black Hills, and for me, I really needed to know, my ask was basically, I need to know that this is going to be told in a fair, balanced way, that there needs to be many voices that contribute to the film. And that's why I said yes. But yeah, I don't think very often people say no or take their time when they hear Mark Ruffalo's attached to something. I was like, that's great, I love Mark, but yeah, I cared more about that, and then getting to know the producers, Ben and Phil, and of course the directors, Laura, and I've known Jesse for a really, really long time, so it wasn't no to Jesse, it was like, yeah, you guys. Are you gonna listen to all my notes? Yeah.
So Mark, I mean, how did you get involved? Was this something that you came in on and when they were shooting, when they were done? Did you see the final product? Was that a part of it?
I came on while they were shooting, and you know, it was a history that I personally didn't know as a white person, and what I learned in school and so on and so forth. But what I came to know when I was mostly at Standing Rock, and the many times that I've been back over the years. And these were my friends, I mean, you know, and it was a moment of trust, but it's a movie that's made by Native people. And I had a lot of faith in them telling their own story, which rarely happens. And, you know, Hollywood contributed in its own way to a great deal of this. And, you know, I know that I have a platform there and that I want to use it to rectify it, to repair it. And so that was a big part of me coming up.
And then Alex, I wanted to ask you what I was asking Sarah. Was there any hesitancy to go in front of the camera and tell your story and your family story?
Not really, because Jesse's my, I guess I would say Kolana jokingly, he's my good friend from way back. And when he called me and said, hey, what are you doing? And I was like, oh, you know, we gotta go to Rapid. He's like, oh, cool, can you come to Deadwood? I'm doing interviews. I was like, okay. So that, you know, we met up there, and I didn't really know, I mean, we met earlier, like, what, a month earlier? So I live on the reservation in South Dakota on the Rosebud Reservation, and it's kind of a drive to get to the city, and we had to go take a horse to a vet in the city, so it's like 2.5 hours away from us. And then on the way back, we were picking up a horse on the Pine Ridge from friends, and we pulled into this little like ghost town on the edge of the Badlands, waiting for our friends to pull up. And across the street, I was like, there's Jesse. So I was, hey, Jesse. And it was him and Ben, and they were, you know, going around taking footage that day. So, you know, it's like how we live in Lakota way, Lakota, everything is a circle and it moves that way. And so when he called me to say that, you know, we're working on this, I was like, okay, cool, I thought it was just, you know, a little film that he was doing, but I am so glad that Mike Hola is the one that told our story, because his voice and his vision was so clear, and it seemed like for the first time, our words are finally heard.
Yeah. So, Laura, you edited the film, and I was talking to you outside. I mean, what an edit. It's unbelievable, really. It took, hundreds of years, condensed it into 2 hours. Can you talk about that? Because what a daunting task, like to include, what to include, what not to include. Can you talk a little bit about the edit and what that was like for you?
I think one of our first rough cuts was like 100 hours, probably, or something like that. It's a hard story to make shorter. I think that one of the challenges of documentary filmmaking that we talk about a lot is how do you simplify something without losing the truth? A lot of that is trial and error. I don't think you can plan that. Sometimes you just cut a scene out and it's fine. We lost a lot of scenes in here that I think we loved, in service of the story and making sure the point came across clearly. Me personally, I had lost my mind in a room for 9 months, but it was, you know, some of the best 9 months of my life, easily. And I would do it again. They're all like, please stop editing the movie. But yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Does your husband want to comment on that? No, I'm just kidding.
Any comment?
Well, you divided it into 3 parts, extermination, assimilation, reparations. Was that your idea, or did Jesse, how did you come up with that?
Yeah, again, it was, looking at this immense history, and then I think Laura, Ben, Sarah, Phil, I think a guiding principle for all of us was to try and keep a very positive tone, and try to keep a tone that looks forward, and if nothing else, even if you have no connection to a Native nation or this specific Native nation, that there's something that you can glean from this story that you can take from yourself, that you can always be a better person, and that if you really, you can hold on to a dream, and sometimes even when it's hard, you just keep pressing forward and hope that. So I think a lot of those things that you mentioned were intentional, but yet also organically presented itself to us.
Oh, I wanted to also ask about the poems. I'm gonna get this wrong. Layli Long, Soldier's poems narrate the story. I thought that was beautiful. Sarah, was that something that you suggested? Who came up with that idea? Because it really, I thought it was poignant and beautiful.
Oh, it wasn't my idea, but I did contribute by saying I loved her voice, and I think that that's how we ended up using her throughout the film.
Okay.
And just real quick on that, you know, Lakota culture, the white buffalo calf woman brought the pipe to the nations, and I always believed that the woman's voice as a creator of life is the only way that we have to really take that into consideration.
That's true, I did say that. I did support that as well. I was like, you guys, where are the women? Yeah, like, that's how we got in a lot of the, like Mary Catherine Nagel, the other expert voices in the film. Because I was like, yes, you guys, where are they?
Okay. What about Dakota 38 and the boarding schools? I mean, I'm gonna just admit my ignorance. I did not know about these things, and I thought, was that something when you were in the edit, or like anyone can answer that, was that something like, we have to get these 2 points in, or was that something you just wanted to make sure you get it in, or?
I'm gonna cheat and answer the Lily question for a second. 30 was my entry point, for sure. I read her incredible book of poetry, Whereas, Layli Long Soldier. 38 is from that book, and then we're also using an original poem she wrote for the film called 135 X's, which is the one that's the body of the work. And I listened to her read that work. And that, for me, was something that was necessary, because not only does it, exposition-wise, it tells us a lot of facts we need to know in a really beautiful way. But beyond that, I think the way that she uses language and deconstructs language in that poem gave us instructions even on how to put together the film. Things may not come in chronological order. The way that she plays with the English language was something we thought about in terms of riffing on Hollywood film, you know, deconstructing that and using that.
And well, I would also add to that, Lakota storytelling isn't very often told in a chronological order, so it's not very linear, so it is very circular. And you see that in the story, how you come all the way back to the end, and in such a beautiful way. I would also say the boarding school question that you mentioned, I think you can't really talk about the history of Native Americans in the United States without mentioning this fact. I worked at the Episcopal Church for over a decade, and part of my earlier work was repudiating the doctrine of discovery in 2009. While I was on the staff of the presiding bishop, Catherine Jeffers Shorey, and I think one of the things that I was really struck with is that I could spend so many times giving speeches to many different communities. I also went into philanthropy and worked in philanthropy as a CEO for Native Americans in Philanthropy, so talking to foundations, talking to very many places, and to me, it always felt like Native people are sort of spinning our wheels when it comes to history, because it's not told in an accurate way. It's not in our school books at all. So this is a way to include something that is really critical to understanding how we came to be where we're at right now.
Yeah.
Definitely educational.
Yeah. So Mark and Alex, I wanted to ask you both, when the 2016 clip showed, I thought, that would have been a perfect time for this film. Like, any time, right? I mean, it could have been told. Why is now the right time, do you think, for this film to be out?
I think now is the right time because we're facing, like in my home state of South Dakota, where they're passing laws to not teach our history, not even mention our history. Jesse's film and this here is showing the rest of the world and hopefully people back home, this is how it is. And we need to learn from it so we don't repeat it. Because our leadership, our governor is passing these almost fascist laws against our history, against education from the preschool all the way to the college level. And so to have this out right now, you know, it's another way we're gonna fight against that kind of dictatorship that we live under back home.
So, I mean, someone who's of outside of the Lakota world. When I went to Standing Rock, what I saw there and what the world saw there changed, I think, everything as far as the world's understanding of the indigenous struggle in this modern time. And we have, culturally, we were ready. You know, a movie doesn't just come out of the blue. It's called forth by a moment in time culturally. And this is that moment. And I keep saying it's the indigenous century because we're ready for it. And they have decided to share it. What I learned at Sundance, at Standing Rock, was that there was a conscious decision to share with the very people who had done the harm. And I don't know, Jesse, if that's right, but that's what I was getting from it, and that's what I was seeing happening throughout the world. I mean, it was a global movement, and they came from everywhere, and it was just a historically important moment that I don't even think people really realize yet, the reverberations of that moment.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you both, would you say this is like a call to action film? Like, or are you hoping that this ignites a firestorm, for lack of a better word, to really, I don't know, even get your land back or just have people recognize your history?
Yeah, for sure. I know that all of us, together, even though we may be strangers, there's a lot of things a lot of stress on all of our shoulders, and a lot of things that are hard to understand, and a lot of things that, what are we gonna do next? And if nothing else, I do think that if you can look to repair, if you can look to rectify, two words that really stood out to me tonight: repair, rectify. And I don't know what that looks like, but I think that if we can head in that direction, I do think that even the great challenges that stand before us right now, as together, we can do. And for me personally, I won't ever be satisfied until I know that kids back home have a safety and that they can live in a world where they don't have to hurt themselves or do things because they know that things ain't right. And they know that this world's hard, may not be a good place to be. So I do think that I feel real good, and I know that there's a long road ahead, and I know that a lot of our people, a lot of the tribes are used to having dirt kicked in their face, used to being told no, used to having things go in a negative way. That being said though, there's a great optimism that I learned from Laura, that she gave me this word, radical optimism, that is always present. And that's what I'm really grateful to Lakota country, is always having that sense of optimism, even in the face of great challenges.
Yeah. Let me ask you about the impact campaign. I wrote this down somewhere. I had the website down, but of course I can't find it. Oh, blackhillsjustice.com. Can you talk a little bit about what that's like? How can people get involved or help? Is that where they would go if they want to?
Yeah, if you want to learn more about just the history, because that even this is probably not everything, right? So there's a little bit more at blackhillsjustice.com. What we're doing is we're really trying to follow the leadership of the tribes in determining the pathway forward. I think that a lot of times people come into these spaces and say, well, we got this great idea for you, like why don't you do it this way? Why don't you do it that way? And for us, it's more about listening to not only the tribal leadership, but also the tribal elders. And as you know, the Oceti Shakon, we have many tribal groups, and so we really need to be able to follow them in that pathway forward. And it could look a lot of different ways. You know, it could look like us getting some of the parks lands back and under control of the tribes, or co-management with the tribes. It could look like, you know, even places becoming monuments or put under tribal control. Even churches have recently begun giving land back to tribes as well. So there's just many different opportunities to enter that space, and we're here to hopefully inspire that.
One more question before I open it up to the audience. What is going on currently with the government and the Black Hill? Like, where do you stand with that? I don't know. That's a loaded question.
No.
We were all just like,
Nothing at the moment.
Okay.
Is the answer. Nothing at the moment. I think that under the Biden administration, what I can say, and with Secretary Deb Haaland, many things have improved. And I think that means even more education to the Department of Interior staffing. And so even like screening this film is important for the government, right? It's important for so many people. But this piece of education is going to be really critical in that pathway moving forward. And so I'm really proud that this is a level of education as a gift that we're able to give not only to you know, the American public, but we get to give it to the administration as well.
Yeah, it's so important. I wanted to open it up to any questions the audience might have. Anybody?
My question was just on distribution. I mean, with all of these states passing all these laws and make it impossible to tell history, I mean, you know, I hope this gets huge distribution, but I'm curious what you guys have been able to work out.
Me too. No, I think we're very grateful. I think obviously IFC is our home. We're so grateful to IFC. We're going to be on, I need an IFC person to tell me the streaming date again. Hulu, oh yeah, Hulu. But just what the exact date is. I think in terms of what we're very excited about is we're doing a continuation of the reservation tour to be screening in the Dakotas, and then I think we're ending in New Mexico in August. So bringing the film on the road there, to me, distribution everywhere in America matters, but I think getting the film there will be also really important. Thank you.
Yeah.
We have a question from someone that knows the answer.
Right here. Yeah.
First of all, today's my birthday.
Happy birthday.
Second of all, this is also regarding distribution. Will this be distributed not only in Indian country, but also in, colonized country?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome.
So it comes out July 14th in New York and LA, and then it will go across the country end of July. Is that
Do we have a producer?
21st in LA,
20
and across the rest of the country over the next few weeks.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, great. Any other questions?
Sarah didn't
Sarah
get
said
that.
I think a lot of people will want to learn a lot more and find directly resources that are parts of the film. Are there resources to do a lot of work on a website that people can go to and start following up and connecting?
So Black Hills Justice does have a lot of those pieces in there, but it's also really important to understand that much of the history books that have been written are written by white men and not written by our people. So while there are documents out there, they may not be the most accurate, and it's also a very complex way to get basically tribes to say yes, because that's who we're looking to for leadership. Is to support that information getting to the right place. So we're going to do our best on blackhillsjustice.com, but it's just important to know that as well.
I'd like to add to that, there's a listserv. I mean, when you go to blackhillsjustice.com, putting in your email address Because there'll be actions that'll come out of this and make themselves apparent, one of them being, what is the plan that the tribal council and elders come up with. So, invite you all to go and, be part of that and, see where it's going to lead.
And it's a long fight, so please join us in that. This is not something that happened over, a few years. As you've seen, this is something that's happened over 400 years. So we hope change comes fast, but it may also take some time, and knowing that we have to also follow, Tungashla, the creator, and however that comes to be.
I just wanted to ask, in terms of a curriculum, a lot of documentaries have a curriculum release, or do you have that in place? Is there a curriculum?
We would love to have that, we do not have that at this moment.
Okay, all right, well, I'm sure, I think it's right for that.
Wait, yes?
It's .org.
.org.
BlackHillsJustice.org.
Yeah, .org, sorry. It's right there. Oh, no, it's not there.
It's on the website though.
BlackHillsJustice.org.
Yeah, sorry.
The woman in the white.
Thank you so much for making this film.
Yes.
It was just beautiful how it's shot, how it's edited. I love the poems. I love her so much. I felt like I was reading her book while doing it. What do you make after this? Like, Jesse, what are you gonna do next?
I haven't really had much time to even think about that. And the reason being is because, I recently come off a 2-year stint working for the Oglala Sioux tribe. And I realize now, that this momentum that's moving forward, regardless of if it's somebody, taking something from it or learning something from it, and whatever that the tribes wish to do moving forward, that I just want to be fully present for that. And, whatever I can do advocating for anything, like through events like this or whatever, that's my major focus. But maybe at some point I would like to think of, something again. But right now, like Sarah said, this is, people have devoted their entire lives to try and get the federal government to hold up their end of the bargain. So I just want to make sure that whatever I can do in the short time in this space, that I can be ready for that even. So I haven't got a chance to think about it yet.
We have like 1 or 2 more questions, go ahead.
Sure. Thank you so much for sharing your story. It was a really beautiful film. I thought one of the things that really struck me was the cinematography, and the intention of trying to create an experience that felt, to me, spiritual and very thought-provoking. I'd love to know some of the intention behind that.
Should we bring out a member of the audience?
Oh, no.
Our brilliant cinematographer, Kevin Phillips, is in the front row. But I think we can answer this easily. You want to talk about it?
Yeah, no, I think when Laura and I first conversed with one another, and that was the moment that we knew we could become one to try and move things forward. One of those initial conversations was, how do we interview the Black Hills? And they were pretty busy, but in all seriousness, we wanted the Black Hills to speak. We wanted the Black Hills to say what they wanted to say. And we tried not to control that in any way. And the only way that they could speak was through the amazing visual technical chops by our cinematographer Kevin, who helped present the Black Hills in a way that I really consider to be a very soulful, meaningful presentation of the Black Hills that even goes far beyond my expectations and what I see on a daily. And I do think that the Black Hills tells us everything in every single shot, whether it's just a bee going on a petal of a sunflower to an ant running into its anthill. It's all there, and there's information there.
One last question right here.
I don't have a question. I just want to tell you, I guess first as like a first generation Black Spanish speaking Caribbean person, that it resonates like clearly. But more than anything, that I hope that all of you take care of yourself, because I can't imagine the amount of labor that must have taken, like the spiritual labor that took. And that I do see all of your ancestors here present, because as you said, it's been 400 years. And just thank you for such powerful work, and just take care of yourself, because I cannot imagine, in the distribution and talking to people, the more education you have to do, and that's taxing. So, yeah, just thank you and take care of yourselves.
Thank you.
Thank you all for being here tonight, and thank you all of you. And like I said, it's really incredible fun. I can't wait for the whole world to see it. So thank you.